We had multiple victims shot, which were transported to various hospitals throughout the city.
I'm just asking that everybody pray and that this violence just stop. You know, it's too many kids getting hurt out here.
13 people shot by guns in Chicago. Impossible. Impossible. I thought that city had more gun control laws than any other place in the United States of America. Well, joining us now to talk about this is our friend Dr. John Lott, who joins us from Philadelphia. Dr. Lott, I want to jump right in to the gun control debates, but first I want to mention you've got a new book out called Dumbing Down the Courts. Just quickly tell us about the new book before we go to the gun control issue. What's your new book about?
Well, it's about how much more difficult it's gotten to confirm people on courts, how much more vicious it's gotten, and explaining why that's the case. And pretty simple explanation, that is, more is at stake. As the size of the federal government's ballooned, as we've had all sorts of new regulatory agencies, you have, since the early 1960s, an 18-fold increase in the number of cases that go to federal courts in the U.S., and it matters a lot more who the judge is. But in particular, what I found is that the brightest nominees have by far the hardest time getting confirmed, and the quality of people on the courts has been declining over the last 3 or 4 decades.
That's fascinating. I'd say I think our legal system is weak, but when I look at the American one, I'm sort of grateful for what we have. But let's get back to the topic of the day. We originally booked you to talk about the Navy Yard shootings in Washington, D.C., that mass shooting spree. And now we have this drive-by shooting. Well, I thought that those two jurisdictions, Washington, D.C., and Chicago, had some of the toughest gun control laws in America. How could it be that they were the site of 2 large shootings in the course of a week?
Well, I guess you know my answer. I think, unfortunately, what you see time after time with these mass shootings is that they keep on occurring where guns are banned. You know, you'd like to think, well, if I just ban guns from an area, it's going to make places safer. But the problem is that when I go and ban guns, it's the law-abiding good citizens who obey them, not the criminals. And rather than making it safe for victims, you unintentionally make it safer for criminals and easier for them to go and commit their crimes. I mean, it's the same reason why people wouldn't put a sign in front of their home that said their home is a gun-free zone. I've debated lots of gun control proponents, and nobody would put a sign like that in front of their home. And yet somehow we put signs like that in front of other places. So
you're right. And here's what's puzzling to me. I mean, I remember the terrorist attack in Fort Hood, Texas, when a Al-Qaeda mole in the U.S. military named Nidal Hassan shot, I can't remember exactly how many, dozens of people. And in an army base, you'd think everyone would be packing heat, but that was a gun-free zone. And again, the Navy Yard shooting, a gun-free zone. Why are U.S. military installations gun-free zones? You would think they should be the safest place in the world where everyone's having a weapon.
Right. There was an amazing interview I saw from CBS in Washington, D.C. Earlier this week where the father of a Marine who was stationed at the Navy Yard, the son had told the father that he was literally less than 2 minutes away from where the attack occurred. They could hear the gunshots. He had his gun with him in his barracks, but they were not allowed to have any ammunition to use in the weapons. This son apparently was an expert in urban warfare, but there was basically nothing that he was going to be able to do. And the reason why they disarm soldiers and other military personnel on military bases is that they want to make it more like a regular work environment, is the claim. But you know, here we have experts. Here we have people that we train to be able to go and handle weapons. And we used to allow, before the early 90s, officers and others to carry their sidearms with them. And now we don't. And rather than making places safer, it presents an opportunity for those who want to try to kill people. When at the Fort Hood case, I mean, it was very clear that the person who killed those people there knew that he wasn't going to face opposition. In this case, in the Navy Yard, even though there were people like this soldier just a couple minutes away, this killer was able to shoot uninterrupted for more than 10 minutes. And so, you know, when you have that longer period of time and nobody's able to be there, you're going to have those types of fatalities that occur. That's a general point. Research I did with Bill Landis, the University of Chicago, showed that the big factor that determines how many people get killed or injured in these attacks is the amount of time that elapses between the attack starts and when somebody's able to arrive on the scene with a gun to stop it.
Now, let's switch gears to the Chicago shooting, because my understanding is that was more gangland style, drive-by style.
Right.
So I guess the whole city is a gun-free zone. What would the solution be to that, Tan? I mean, Chicago, run by Democrats for decades. You know, every Democrat idea, from public housing to massive welfare to gun control. I mean, obviously what the left has done in that town isn't working. It's sort of like a not so bad version of Detroit, maybe like Detroit was 30 years ago. What could Chicago do? Because it really has a death toll, and I don't mean to flippant here, but it's comparable to the U.S. death toll in Afghanistan.
Right. No, it's been pretty big, and it's been very bad. Look, Rahm Emanuel bears some of the blame for the increase in murder and violent crime over the last few years. When he became mayor, he cut the police budget by about 10%. Even more important, he moved police around the city. People who had been on patrol beats for 10 or 15 years in an area were moved for political reasons, not for crime-fighting reasons, to other areas of the city. When you've been a police officer in one area for 10 years, you know the informants, you know the lay of the land, you know where the problem spots are. When you move them to a new place, it takes a while for them to go and develop that same type of information. You lose all that kind of human capital in terms of fighting crime. And the third thing that he did was he disbanded a lot of the gang fighting units. Now, the irony is he did all this to go and save money, or at least a lot of it to save money. But this year they've been hiring people overtime. And by May, they had spent the entire overtime budget for the year, and it's pretty clear by the end of the year he's actually going to spend more money than if he hadn't cut the police force to begin with.
It's shocking to know that that was Barack Obama's first chief of staff. Dr. Law, we're out of time. Great to have you on the show. You keep the fight up for freedom, property rights, and the safety of ordinary citizens. Thanks for being here today, folks. It's
great
BC.
talking to you.
You too.